Another week here in central Minnesota, Twin Cities area. You know, we've had some, again, unusual temperatures this last week. It got cold a bunch of nights. Pretty rare in the beginning of September where you wake up to 40-degree hot weather. It's been pretty chilly, a lot of sweatshirt type stuff, some wind. Things are bouncing back right now though. It's Sunday, it's beautiful, it's supposed to be mid-80s today. If you look at the 10-day forecast, it's going to get back to where we should be for middle of September with 70s and 80s for highs. So if you're looking to get out and enjoy some comfortable weather, it's coming. This weekend's been nice. The wind continues to plague us a little bit with some high winds, that sort of stuff. So if you're out there on the water, you're probably going to try and find ways to get away from the wind, and that's just fine because the fish seem to be there too. So what I'm seeing in the last week is a lot of the fish are continually moving shallower. They're not just sitting on deep stuff. So when it's in the middle of the summer and we talk about these high winds, sometimes it's just a painful day because you're dealing with a lot of wind and waves and all that sort of stuff, trying to keep the boat in position. Right now, you can get out of the wind, you can find fish, catch fish, and be comfortable. So, but the beauty, like I said, you're going to start seeing 70s and 80s again popping back up here for high temperatures the next week. Should keep things a little more consistent. What we're doing to catch some fish, Jack's got just a bait casting rod here. He got 20-pound vicious braid on there. Nothing overly fancy, medium, heavy combo. And the reason I'm showing you this is it's nothing fancy about 20-pound braid, 30-pound braid on a bait casting setup, but I'm showing you some versatility options. Right now, because those fish are moving shallower, this is an easy setup, and I'll show you what I'm rigging here to catch just about anything that swims. And you can do the same thing with a spinning rod, so don't feel like you have to be pressured into a bait caster. We talked about this the other week about flipping and throwing bigger jigs for bass, is you can get away throwing that with a spinning rod. So you can use a spinning rod with the same application. This just happens to be a Shimano bait caster and rod setup. And what we're doing right now in terms of versatility, I have this is just a 3/0 worm hook rigged on here. Nothing overly fancy. Again, you've all seen this a million times. 3/0 or so worm hook. And the reason I'm showing you this is I can fish this worm hook just about in any condition right now with a few extra pieces of arsenal, a few extra pieces of terminal tackle, I should say. So you got a 3/0 worm hook, get your favorite plastic, whether it be a Mr. Twister Cometa, whether it be some type of worm, whether it be a crawbait, creature bait, that sort of thing, and you can fish it, of course, without a weight. So if you want to go around shallow cover and wacky rig a Cometa, you can do that. You want to pitch, let's say, a worm around shallow cover or skip docks, you can do that. Maybe not always as conducive on a bait casting rod without weight, but you got the versatility of just a worm hook and your favorite plastic to fish weightless. What you can then add to the setup, if you would like, is you can fish it weedless or wacky style like mentioned. So you got various ways to fish it, but then you can also take, very simple setup, you can take a crimp-on bullet weight. Watergun makes a pile of them. They're super inexpensive. You can buy them at any store, whether it be Thorne Brothers, whether it be a Cabela's, whether it be a Mills Fleet Farm, whether it be a Shields, whether it be any store near you, you can buy just crimp-on bullet weights. Nothing fancy, and they range all different types of weights and sizes, usually 1/8 ounce up to, let's say, 1/4 ounce, something of that nature. So if you get some 1/8 ounce and 1/4 ounces, you're probably good. And now what you can do is you can crimp that bullet weight on right to the head of the line here where the head of the hook goes. And now you have something more like a jig worm approach. If you want to fish a little deeper, punch some cover in a weedless approach, you can do that. What you also can do is take that bullet weight and slide it up your line ever so slightly, and you can fish a Carolina rig, a fixed Carolina rig. So now you can fish deeper cover. You can do something a little different, give it a different approach, different profile. So you have various options. So a worm hook rigged on a rod right now with a variety of plastics and a couple different size bullet weights gives you probably the most versatility. So if you want to move shallow, take the weight off, put a wacky rig on there, put a little Mr. Twister Cometa, and pitch around for bass. You want to get out deeper, put that weight on there, maybe switch to a worm, switch to a creature bait, and you can fish a peg Carolina rig. Or you can slide the bullet weight all the way down to the head of the hook, and you can punch things a little more, fish a little more effectively in a weedless approach. So that's a very versatile way to fish. Again, I might not be teaching anything new, but use that approach. Sometimes we overthink a day on the water. We go out there and we come out with 87 different rods and all these different ways to fish. Put that worm hook on a rod, 20-pound braid, get a couple weights, a handful of your favorite plastics, and go to town. You probably can fish about any condition and continue to stay active. So try that in terms of fishing approach. We're also catching a lot of panfish. You've caught some big panfish in the last week. And again, those fish, what we saw recently was when you get those warm sunny days and you get some wind, you find some stagnant water, the bluegills kind of come roaming in there and they're looking for some warm water. These fish are not in tune with what month it is. Fish are not as smart as we think they are. They don't know it's September, they don't know it's August, they don't know it's April, they don't know it's any month. They dictate where they go based off of comfort, water temperature, food and forage, all those sorts of things, habitat, structure, safety from predator fish. So they don't necessarily know, well, it's September, I should be here, I shouldn't be there. We think that way, but fish use what their environment gives them, meaning temperature, forage base, comfort, safe haven, those sorts of things. So when you get those cooler days, water temps are in the mid to upper 60s in the morning. It's still abnormal. So if you get those really warm afternoons where the sun's peeking out and everything's getting hot and that water moves all over the place, you find some stagnant water, you'll see those water temps jump up a couple degrees, and for whatever reason, water temperature being comfort, those bluegills and those crappies slide up there. No different than in the spring, you want to find the warmest water to find the fish. You're seeing some similar characteristics right now, and we're coming after those fish with just small twister tails, small tubes, those sorts of baits. Jack caught a bunch on a ice fishing rod the other day. So when you see those fish, if you got the kids in the boat, grab the ice rods. There's no reason that you don't need to fish a long rod in the summer. So an ice fishing rod, maybe not as conducive for casting long distances, but if you see those fish in 4, 5, 6, 7 feet of water along the weeds, drop that little ice jig down there. It's fun for the kids. They have a lot more control. They can reel them in. They can even reel in bigger fish if they happen to hook a bass. I think either you or Benny caught a bass on an ice fishing rod too. So not the desired approach if you're fishing bass, but if you're going to do the panfish thing with the kids right now and you want to have them jig over the side of the boat with just an ice rod, you can definitely give that a shot. The pike are snapping everywhere. That's one species I've been preaching on email, messages, all that sort of stuff. Hey, I'm looking to get out on a bite. What should I do? You know, if you want a foolproof plan, throw a spinnerbait on your rod. You know what I'm talking about. We caught a bunch of them. A spinnerbait on your rod and go out there and fish that 3 to 10 foot range and just cast around with spinnerbaits where the weeds are. There's pike, there's bass. The activity is hot right there. So that's great action for family, for kids. If you want to get active, cast the bait, start reeling it at a steady retrieve, just enough so you can feel those blades go bum, 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 bum. And that's what seems to be sealing the deal for pike, bass, kind of that mixed bag. So a lot going on. I expect some things to stay consistent this next week. You got weather patterns staying in the 70s and 80s. I'm not seeing much for rain. I don't see any major storms coming through. I know kids are back in school. Life is hectic. You're not probably fishing as much during the week. But if you can get out there, enjoy it. Should be some comfortable evenings. If you're in and around kids' activities and sports, Jack's playing football, we're busy. But you might get out in the weekend or the evenings and still chase some fish. Get out there and have some fun. So again, we plan to get at you again next week and see how things progressed, how things change. Before you know it, we are going to be talking fall patterns. That fall transition is going to be upon us before we know it, where things start to gradually stay cooler. So when that sun starts to hit those trees in the evening, it gets noticeably cooler. It's not like in the middle of the summer. You probably all have seen that. You're out there watching a sport or out there doing something in the evening, cutting the grass. The second that sun starts to hit the trees, it feels like they turned a light switch off in terms of the temperature. So get out there, have some fun, be safe. Enjoy the football season. I'm sure there's a lot of fantasy football players out there enjoying already watching the clock every day. Game started. Our Vikings play tomorrow night against the Saints. I'm super excited to watch it. Hopefully they can get a W the first game. Otherwise, get out there, have some fun, be safe, and we'll catch you next week.